Hi, my name's Tim. Welcome to Tim Burbage Reads. And today I'm going to be doing a wrap up of my mystery challenge that I've done this year. So this year, my wife very lovingly curated a collection of books, mystery books for me. They were collected from our house, from our friends, from our families, and she wrapped them up. And every month I unwrapped a new book to read, a complete mystery. I had no idea what any of them were. And this is, I've now finished all of those books, all 12 of those books. And I'm going to do a little wrap up of what I enjoyed, what books I read, what were my best, what were my worst, things like that. So in January, I unwrapped a very small book. It was a biography of Benjamin Zephaniah by Verna Wilkins. And Benjamin Zephaniah was a British poet who was really inspirational in how he looked at the world. What I didn't know was just how rough his life was as a young person growing up in Birmingham, and how he came out of school not really knowing how to read or write, but had a tremendous memory. So he had a very good brain, and the British school system let him down. I'm still sad that he passed away last year, and I think he's a big loss to people. But my son has then got a Yoto story of his poetry and Benjamin Zephaniah actually reads it. And that's how his poetry is meant to be enjoyed. It's meant to be listened to. His poetry is very oratory. And 5 stars from me. Brilliant. What a great start to the year. Then in February, I had another shorter book. It was The Queen's Nose by Dick King-Smith, which was probably my mum's favourite TV show that we used to watch together when I was a kid. And I hadn't read any Dick King-Smith growing up. This was brilliant. I loved this. The story of the magic 50p piece was great, and how Harmony, the main character, wishes for different things, and sometimes her wishes come true not in the way that she wanted them to, and how she has to learn, and she grows up through these wishes. But a big selling point was Harmony as a character being so tomboyish and so clear in her characterization from the start all the way through. How she loves animals, and how she views all of her family and basically every adult she deals with as an animal, and that comes across really clearly. Then in March, I got a much bigger book to read. That was The Silmarillion from my brother-in-law, and so I ended up finishing that in April, but I read most of it in March, and oh my goodness, The Silmarillion. What a book. It's unlike anything else. It's an encyclopedia, it's a Bible, it's a anthology, it's an epic. And I really enjoyed reading it. Tolkien's prose is just beautiful, and it's full of proper nouns and place names, and some bits race through history. It's the story of endings, it's the story of ultimately evil winning out mostly over good, and good just has to keep fighting on as much as they can. Absolutely brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Then in April, I got a book that was a gift to me last year, The Ride of a Lifetime by Bob Iger, the biography of the Disney CEO, having written it just as he was about to retire from Disney, and then before he got called back. Really interesting to read. The stories of the Marvel and Star Wars takeovers were interesting. His life before becoming Disney CEO was interesting. Yeah, his views on expansion, and actually his views generally on how to manage people were quite engaging. Then I got The Story of My Life by Helen Keller in May. This is second non-fiction. This is from my friend Gemma, who is an audiologist. She's very passionate about hearing and deafness, and Helen Keller was deaf and blind and couldn't speak, but was incredibly smart, and she learnt about the world in a very particular way. And this autobiography she wrote when she was like 21, which is just insane. And then the second half of the book was her letters to her friends and family, and you see how her brain develops so quickly as she learns to write and read in her very own particular way, and how she learns how to experience the world, and she goes to university and all this kind of stuff. Really engaging. And then in July, was another non-fiction book. It was Rifles by Mark Urban, the story of a regiment in the Napoleonic Wars. This was from Craig, Gemma's husband, my friend Craig, who has a lot of non-fiction books. He's a big non-fiction reader, and I found this really interesting. The narrative non-fiction style was engaging to read because it was like reading a story. There were some challenges. One was the maps were flipping terrible in the book. A lot of it is like them progressing through Portugal, this military unit, and it's like, oh, we went to this town and this town and this town. You look at the map and you can't see any of the towns on the map, or anything that is interesting is right in the middle. Like, why is that? And it did falter from it being based on a true story. So you follow this group of characters who are real people. You're really invested in them. And then there's a huge battle that is brutal and full of death, and a lot of those characters die or are very severely injured or finish their time in the military, so leave. And then the last third of the book, you're kind of with a whole new group of characters, and you're like, I don't know who these people are. I'm not invested in them as much. But that's what happened. So, that's what you have to go with. Then in August, I read Mary Poppins by P.L. Travers. This was from, I think my wife picked it up in one of those free little libraries that you get that was at the schools. This I did not enjoy as much. Mary Poppins is just really not very nice in the book, and it repeats itself a lot. Anytime she stops at a mirror, she's incredibly self-obsessed. She sniffs a lot, and it's like Mary Poppins sniffed, sniffed sharply. It kind of keeps happening, and she ultimately does gaslight the children into taking them on exciting adventures and then denying that they ever existed. A lot of it doesn't even involve things that happen in the film. I think the film takes stuff from different stories, and the film has that magic, and the book just didn't have that magic for me. Maybe because it's not a visual medium and you can't imagine those things happening, or I struggled to. But man, I did not enjoy that as much. Then in September, for Roald Dahl Day, I read Danny, Champion of the World, and I loved this book. I didn't really know what it was about, and it's about dad and his son poaching some pheasants, but it's not really about that. It's about a connection between a father and a son. And as a dad, I really enjoyed reading that. I also enjoyed reading how the whole group of townspeople were kind of all in on it against the rich gentry. And I like reading a bit of that. Then in October, I read Set in Stone. This was from my sister-in-law, Anna, one of the Disney Twisted Tales. This is by Marie Mancusi. I really enjoyed this. Sword in the Stone is one of Anna's favourite films. Reading this is like, the twist happens right at the end of the film, and then but right at the start of the book. So the book is basically a sequel, which I really enjoyed that nature of it. I thought it handled the twist really well. It introduced a new character in Guinevere, who was very engaging. And I was really invested in Arthur. It had the wacky stylings of The Sword in the Stone, but with a bit more drama to it, which I enjoyed. Then I had a book that I started in June and ended up taking a bit of a break from for a few months and finished in October. And that was Memoirs of a Geisha by Arthur Golden. This was from my friend Marielle. We were going on a holiday to Japan, and I was like, I'm going to read it to get ready for Japan. And it was interesting, it was engaging, but there was a period of time in the middle of the book for about 100 pages, 150 pages, where it's just women being horrible to each other for no reason other than women being horrible to each other. And it just kept happening again and again and again and again. And I just had enough. So I took a bit of a break. And funnily enough, as soon as I took that break and came back to it, all that stuff had basically finished by then. So maybe if I could have kept through it, but it didn't want to go. But I did enjoy it. I found the insight into Japan and their culture very interesting. I did just find it very repetitive at points. And there was one scene where the main character meets a baron, which was so tense. Chewed all my fingernails off reading that one scene. It was so tense, so nerve-wracking. Very good writing. I found the framing narrative a bit strange. I thought the time jumps were a bit strange, but I enjoyed it. I don't think it was necessarily for me. It wasn't one of my best books, but if someone said, like my sister, My sister-in-law Jenny, that's like one of her favorite books, and I'm like, I completely get why. I just didn't feel it, you know? Then in November, I got Travellers in the Third Reich by Julia Boyd. This is from Craig. This is another non-fiction book about tourists going into Germany, primarily between World War I and World War II, and how people are willing to put their moral standards aside to have a nice holiday somewhere in a beautiful country. Also, how much anti-Semitism was rife in that period of time. And you see the progression of the National Socialist regime through the eyes of people visiting. And there's a lot of rich half-wit sons and daughters of aristocrats who go and think it's all blimmin' good, actually. Yeah, that was quite uncomfortable to read, but very interesting. And then for December, I got from my sister-in-law Anna, Before the Coffee Gets Cold by Toshikazu Kawaguchi. This was incredible, kind of magical realism about a coffee shop in Tokyo where you sit at a particular seat and have a particular kind of coffee, you could travel back in time. Or you could travel in time, I should say. But there's rules attached, and there's kind of a very small group of characters in a very small place. It was written in a very stilted style, which I've read some people kind of bounced off. I get that. It takes a while to get used to. That first few pages was a bit like, what am I reading? But in a very small amount of time, in 4 short stories, basically, it really hits you emotionally on what it's like to be human and how we treat the people who we love and what we should do more to the people that we love. Yeah, so that's my mystery challenge. I really enjoyed it. It has pushed me outside my comfort zone. I've read some things that I would never have read. I've read some things that I probably would have got to at some point. A good mix. I just want to say thank you to my wife Leanne for putting all this together. I've really enjoyed it, and I'll see what happens in the next year with different challenges that I might like to do. Anyway, please give this video a like. Please subscribe. Really appreciate it if you've got this far, and I'll see you in the next one. Now, get out of my house!